The Sea Vixen was one of the most capable naval fighters Britain ever built, yet nobody else wanted one. It was rejected to the point that even Britain replaced it with an American aircraft. It was built to scare Soviet bombers, but first it scared the man sitting inside it. So the pilot sat under a canopy offset to the left with outside views. But the observer sat in a dark hole buried low in the right side of the fuselage with almost no view outside. All they see are radar screens, darkness, and the sound of his own breathing. Now imagine his job, catapulted off a carrier at night in bad weather with the sea somewhere below and no way to see it, while the pilot throws the aircraft into a hard turn and the Sea Vixen is crashing down. His only way out is through a hatch above his head, a hatch that, on early aircraft, had to jettison before his ejection seat could fire. That delay took the lives of observers. Of the 145 Sea Vixens built, 55 were lost in accidents. 30 of those were fatal. 51 Royal Navy aircrew died in roughly 12 years of peacetime operations. That is a loss rate of almost 38%. To better understand what happened, let's roll back a bit. So after the Second World War, the Royal Navy proved with the de Havilland Sea Vampire that jets could operate from carriers. But the Sea Vampire could not fight at night, find targets in cloud, or defend a carrier group in bad weather. And the threat was changing. Soviet bomber development was accelerating, and the Royal Navy needed a fleet defense fighter that could protect its carriers around the clock, in darkness, in poor weather, over open ocean. That demanded radar, and radar demanded a second crewman, because in the late 1940s, one pilot could not safely fly a high-speed intercept, manage a radar set, navigate, and then recover to a carrier. So the requirement called for a twin-engine, two-seat, radar-equipped, all-weather naval fighter. The RAF issued a similar requirement for a land-based night fighter. De Havilland, looking at both specifications, decided a single aircraft could satisfy them both. That aircraft was the DH110. From the beginning, the DH110 struggled to find a home. The RAF contracted 5 aircraft, and the Navy ordered 4. But both services quickly started backing away. The Navy cancelled its 4 because a simpler and cheaper option had appeared, an improved de Havilland Sea Venom, which could arrive sooner and cost less. The RAF reduced its order to 2 prototypes because Gloster Aircraft had produced the GA-5, what would become the Javelin, and Gloster got their aircraft into the air first. Once that happened, RAF interest in the DH-110 ended. So before the Sea Vixen even existed, the aircraft that would become it had already lost its 2 biggest customers. De Havilland pressed on anyway. The first DH-110 flew on the 26th of November, 1951. A year later, it appeared at the Farnborough Air Show. During a rolling pull-up maneuver, the wing failed and the aircraft broke apart in front of the crowd. Both crew members, pilot John Derry and observer Tony Richards, died in the crash. Wreckage then struck the spectator enclosures, and 29 people on the ground also lost their lives. The remaining prototype was strengthened and redesigned, an all-moving tailplane was fitted, cambered leading-edge extensions were added, and the modified aircraft did not fly again until July 1954. And by then, a strange thing had happened. The improved Sea Venom project had been cancelled. The Navy looked at the DH-110 again and decided it was interested after all. The second prototype underwent carrier trials, and the Navy liked what it saw. In February 1955, the Navy ordered 110 aircraft. The type was designated the Sea Vixen, the first development aircraft, a rush job with incomplete carrier modifications and no folding wings, flew later that year. It took 2 more years to get a full production aircraft into the air, and by 1959, the Sea Vixen was entering frontline fleet air arms service, replacing the Sea Venom. But the aircraft that emerged from this long, troubled development was shaped by every compromise the requirement demanded. The Sea Vixen inherited the twin-boom layout from de Havilland's earlier Vampire and Venom, a configuration the Navy already knew. It kept the side-by-side crew arrangement of the Sea Venom, but in a drastically different form. And the coal hole was not accidental cruelty. Early radar displays were dim. The observer needed darkness to read the scope properly, so his compartment was kept deliberately dark. 2 Rolls-Royce Avon Mark 208 turbojets powered the aircraft. They gave the Sea Vixen strong performance for its era, but they created a specific problem around the carrier. The aircraft was aerodynamically clean, which sounds like a good thing. But on approach, low drag meant the pilot had to pull the throttles well back to hold the right speed. With the engines sitting low in the power range, spool-up was not instant. If the pilot needed thrust close to the deck, the engines did not give it quickly. Speed accuracy became critical. Get it wrong, and there was very little time to recover. The original specification had called for 4 Aden cannon as well as 4 Firestreak missiles, but the guns were removed, following the fashion of the day that missiles had made cannon obsolete. On paper, that sounded like the future. In practice, Firestreak was mainly a tail chase weapon, so the observer had to steer the intercept to get behind the target, and the radar had no look-down capability. If the threat was coming in low, hugging the Sea Vixen had to be flying even lower to find it. The FAW-2 variant arrived in 1963 with meaningful improvements. Enlarged tail booms extended forward of the wings, carrying extra fuel and electronic countermeasures equipment. Red-top missiles offered a limited all-aspect capability instead of pure tail chase. And the observer's hatch was redesigned, bulged with a larger perspex area, and made frangible so he could eject through it. But even the FAW-2 was a compromise on a compromise. The enlarged booms added weight. The aerodynamic changes meant the aircraft could no longer carry 1,000-pound bombs, and the fundamental character of the Sea Vixen, a large, heavy, clean, twin-engine carrier jet with a buried observer, remained the same. Those compromises had a cost, because between 1960 and 1970, 51 aircrew died, all casualties of a Cold War that so many think was bloodless. The aircraft was used as an interceptor, but also for ground attack, fighter escort, strike, and photographic reconnaissance. Many were lost at night on self-illuminating target flare ground attacks, one of the most dangerous profiles a crew could fly. And the environment was unforgiving in ways that had nothing to do with design. This was a large jet being operated from small British carriers by day and night in some of the worst flying conditions possible. The aircraft's tough construction saved it on many occasions. In one famous incident, a deck landing went wrong, and a Sea Vixen hit several parked aircraft before staggering back into the air. The pilot diverted to a shore base and landed safely. And yet the Sea Vixen did what it was built to do. It gave the Royal Navy a proper all-weather fleet defense fighter for the first time, able to operate in conditions that would have grounded earlier types. In the summer of 1961, Iraq threatened to invade Kuwait. HMS Victorious moved from the South China Sea to the Persian Gulf. HMS Bulwark landed Royal Marines. Sea Vixens patrolled the skies. When a further carrier arrived off Aden, Iraq's President Qasem suddenly backed down. Over the following years, Sea Vixens flew air cover for Marines in Tanganyika, supported British forces in the Persian Gulf, and oversaw the final withdrawal from Aden in 1967, a decade of small deployments that proved the aircraft could do the job it was designed for. They were even trusted to display teams. Simon's Circus and Fred's 5 flew formation aerobatics in the type, and Simon's Circus was regarded by many as one of the best display teams ever. But the Sea Vixen's success was confined to one customer, the Royal Navy. De Havilland had considerable interest from NATO allies and Australia. There was even an improved version on the drawing board, a Mach 1.4 plus Sea Vixen with thin wings, a genuine supersonic fleet fighter. If that aircraft had been built, the export story might have been different. But in 1957, the British government published a defense white paper that changed everything. Written by Defense Minister Duncan Sandys, it declared that manned combat aircraft were becoming obsolete and that the future belonged to guided missiles. Fighter projects were cancelled across the board. The supersonic Sea Vixen variant had already been cancelled the year before, and the message to foreign buyers was devastating. Why invest in a British naval fighter when Britain's own government was publicly saying manned fighters had no future? And even without the white paper, the Sea Vixen had a structural export problem. Most countries did not operate aircraft carriers. Those that did mostly had smaller decks, and the Sea Vixen was large and heavy. It needed 2 crew, a dedicated radar intercept system, missile infrastructure, and expensive maintenance. It was not particularly a product, it was a system designed around British carriers. Australia is the clearest example. The Royal Australian Navy had operated the Sea Venom and was the most natural customer. But when it needed a replacement, it chose the American A4 Skyhawk, which is cheaper, simpler, and far better suited to the light carrier HMAS Melbourne. The Skyhawk was not a better radar intercept fighter, but it was a better answer to Australia's actual problem. France tells a similar story. The French Navy needed a carrier fighter for Clemenceau and Foch, but chose the F-8 Crusader, which had stronger air combat credentials. The Sea Vixen was fast, but not truly supersonic in level flight. Against the Crusader, it looked like what it was, a late 1950s answer in an early 1960s market. And then there was cost. In a 1964 parliamentary debate, it was stated that a Sea Vixen cost approximately 7 times more than the Sea Venom it replaced. For any small navy weighing a Sea Vixen against an American alternative, that arithmetic was impossible to ignore. In 1966, a second defense white paper cancelled CVA's 01, the Royal Navy's planned new aircraft carrier. The RAF had claimed it could reach any spot on the globe as easily as the Navy's carrier force. The carriers were needed almost immediately when Rhodesia declared independence and the Navy mounted operations to enforce oil sanctions. The RAF's Javelins deployed to the area and proved completely ineffective. But the political decision had been made. Without new carriers, the Sea Vixen had no future. The Admiralty had already planned to replace it with the McDonnell Douglas Phantom FG.1, an American aircraft. And in 1972, the last Sea Vixen squadron was disbanded. Many considered the retirement premature. The airframes had years of life left. But there were no longer enough carriers to take them, and with Phantoms entering service, the last de Havilland fighter was stood down. So that's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It goes a long way for us.